it's a really interesting experience to read a book with someone that you actually know versus reading a book with someone you don't know at all. Like it's I don't know how to explain it other than it's different. And I mean that's how I didn't know you that well when I read yours a
Mhm.
couple years ago, Eternally Expecting. But then as I've gotten to know you, there's pieces, that like will pop out to me that I'm like, oh yeah, this all like I can see all of this coming together. And I do know Erica. She's a local writer. She has been writing for politics and she's very well known and she has lots of national pieces. And so it was definitely and it's always a different experience to read somebody else's story when you know them.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy, a Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Well, greetings, compadres. Guess what? It's the Boozeless Book Club. Yay! And here's Elyse Bryson with me today again. Best day ever. Hi,
Hi
Elyse.
friend. Hi friend. How are you? It's good to be
I'm
here.
so good. How are you doing, lady?
I'm really proud of us for the quantity of books we've read this year. Like we're good little readers. I know that we're writers too, but we're good little readers.
Yeah, I actually, to be totally 100% honest with you, I have not read this many books consistently, probably since college.
I think that's the trick is that we have this consistency because we have this commitment to doing this once a month.
Yeah,
And so it's like I know I have to do it. I have a deadline and I have to do it.
right.
So I think I didn't maybe that's the upside of book clubs. Like maybe I don't know. I've never been in a book club before. So,
Yeah, and you kind of feel like I used to be in a Bible study 100 years ago that was like they had this rule. If you didn't do the homework, you couldn't speak. And so it was kind of funny because I mean, it sounds terribly like harsh and messed up and stuff, but it did motivate you because you knew you couldn't share. So it was kind of like, I better do the homework, you know what I mean? Like, and it's true, you don't want to kind of show up for something and be like 1,000% like unaware of what is happening. So it's like, I get it. But
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay. So this month we read a book called Quitter. So this is another quitlet, everybody. A Memoir of Drinking, Relapse, and Recovery by Erica C. Barnett, who, by the way, is a local Seattle author. What? So I'm going to read a little summary and then we're just going to chit chat about it. We're just going to jump on in. Here's the summary. Ready? Go, Amy. Erica C. Barnett had her first sip of alcohol when she was 13, and she quickly developed a taste for drinking to oblivion with her friends. In her late 20s, her addiction became inescapable. Volatile relationships, blackouts, and unsuccessful stints in detox defined her life, with the vodka bottle she hid throughout her apartment and offices acting as both her tormentors and closest friends. By the time she was in her late 30s, Erica Barnett had run the gauntlet of alcoholism. She had recovered and relapsed time and again, but after each new program or detox center would find herself far from rehabilitated. Rock bottom, Barnett writes, is a lie. It is always possible, she learned, to go lower than your lowest point. She found that the terms other alcoholics use to describe the trajectory of their addiction, like rock bottom or a moment of clarity, and the mottos touted by Alcoholics Anonymous, such as, quote, let go and let God, unquote, and, quote, you're only as sick as your secrets, unquote, didn't correspond to her experience and could actually be detrimental. With remarkably brave and vulnerable writing, Barnett expands on her personal story to confront the dire state of addiction in America, the rise of alcoholism in American women in the last century, and the lack of rehabilitation options available to addicts. At a time when opioid addiction is a national epidemic and 1 in 12 Americans suffers from abuse disorder, Quitter is an essential reading for our age and an ultimately hopeful story of Barnett's own hard-fought path to sobriety. So, we read this book, Quitter, a memoir of drinking, relapse, and recovery. And, when I was reading this book, I felt like, have you ever been on that merry-go-round at Green Lake?
I have.
Okay, that's how I felt reading this book. I felt like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I mean, her unmanageability level was off the charts. Not that my own wasn't, okay? But I felt like as a reader, it's got to get better. It's got to get better. Like, I just got to hang on. It's got to get better. It's got to get better. And while it finally did, it was kind of a rough ride. I mean, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It reminded me of my own unmanageability, which means the whole thing was totally relatable, but it was almost amplified. Like, just when I thought she was turning a corner and it was going to get better, like we were going to maybe get a break and the merry-go-round was going to sort of slow down, it would like pick up speed. And that's how I felt reading this. It was just crazy town. And I think that for me, the overarching theme that just kept popping up, that just made me really just go, oh yeah, was about relationships. The unmanageability that she faced in her relationships, whether that was in the workplace or personal relationships. It just felt like that was just kind of like the knife in my gut twisting a little bit, because it definitely brought me back to a lot of my relationships. And I think I'll share that, my husband to this day is like, that's the worst thing that I ever experienced, was watching you in active alcoholism and not knowing when or if it was going to end. And, I mean, that's despite basically me losing my life almost to myocarditis and the heart stuff, all the fun and games that entailed. He was like, yeah, no, like alcoholism was far worse. And so it was hard on our relationship, and it took a lot of rebuilding. And that was, on my part, I had to really prove myself a trustworthy person to him, as I should. So I was wondering what you thought about, if you had any thoughts about relationships, or we can take a turn. And if you, had some other emotions that were evoked in reading this, let's talk about those too.
All right. Well, first off, let's just give a shout out to your husband, Andrew, because I have, obviously, as your friend, had an opportunity to get to know him. And I really respect and admire the devotion that you have to each other and the true partnership that you have. And I don't know if marriage will ever be part of my storyline, but if it ever is, I would love to have a marriage similar to the one that I see that you both work on, because I know that it's work, right? And you guys are going in a lot of different directions, and then to hear about how hard that time was for him, like and to see how he shows up for you consistently now, and obviously he showed up for you then too. But I just yeah, shout out to Andrew.
Thanks.
So let's just a little love note
Agreed.
there. Yeah, relationships are hard. That's why I don't do them.
I love you.
So, okay, so as we know, I love Quitlet. I love memoirs. I have, you can't see it because my bookshelves are on either side of me, on the wall that I'm facing, but I have a pretty expansive Quitlet library that I have been collecting since 2006. And I fell in love with Quitlet memoirs. My very first one that I read was called Beach Glass. And
Mm.
it was really powerful to me in early recovery to read another woman's story. And that was the first book that made me think maybe someday I would become a writer and I would publish a memoir and talk about my own journey. And 17 plus years later, that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But as we know, I am working on a little project on the side and we'll see what comes of it. And right now it's just getting all the stories out of my head and onto the page. We'll see what happens after that. But so where I'm going with this is that I have had the opportunity now to read over 100 Quitlet memoir books. There are that many out there. And in most cases, I didn't know the author, but there are lots now, because of my involvement in the online recovery community, that I actually know them before I read the book or even after. And it's a really interesting experience to read a book with someone that you actually know versus reading a book with someone you don't know at all. Like it's I don't know how to explain it other than it's different. And I mean, that's how I didn't know you that well when I read yours a couple years ago, eternally expecting. But then as I've gotten to know you, there's pieces, that like will pop out to me that I'm like, oh yeah, this all, like I can see all of this coming together. And I do know Erica. She's a local writer. She has been writing for politics and she's very well known and she has lots of national pieces. And so it was definitely and it's always a different experience to read somebody else's story when you know them. It's just
Mm.
different. And you're right. Hers was a tumultuous storyline. There were, it was like a merry-go-round that you just wanted to get off of. You wanted her to get off of it. You wanted her to find some relief. And being in the publishing world is a challenging space. A lot of drinking happens in a lot of different careers, but definitely in the publishing world, right?
Mm.
Definitely in the publishing world. And so I always think it's brave when somebody shares their story and is so raw and vulnerable as Erica was. And you're right, there was an underlying theme of the struggle for relationships, and the maintenance of them. Even the people that she held near and dear, there were challenges. And I identify with that a lot. I learned a long time ago that if I focus on the similarities versus the differences, I'll get so much more out of the story. Right. And so with this book, I was able to look at the parts where I could identify with that. And blackout drinking is a definite one that I always identify with. But also having a career that's somewhat in the public eye while trying to keep your life together with this kind of a secret is also super challenging. I know that as well.
Mm.
And so I think she did a great job. I With all books, I wish I always want to hear more about what happens after the recovery than just all the things leading up to it. Just because in my experience, the story gets so much more interesting after someone gets and remains sober for consistently long chunks of time.
Mm.
So I wish there would have been a bit more of that because I know she's got lots of years under her belt now. But I did think it was well written. And for me, when I look at, I am also challenged with relationships and, I don't date. And, I used to date like a lot and it just didn't, I don't know if I have a broken picker. I don't know if I have intimacy issues, but it hasn't worked for me. I don't remember the last time somebody made it past a third date for whatever reason, right? And I also have challenges in non-romantic relationships too. I like to keep everybody kind of out here,
Mm.
and this like veil of everything's great. Look at my Facebook feed. Don't you think my life is fabulous? When actually behind the curtains, it's a mess. And I really got that from Erica's book.
Mm. Yeah. I know. I totally, I'm there with you. I thought she was, some of the things that she had the balls to say in her book, I was really impressed with. I mean, some of the things that she did about, when a relationship would end, she was like, I'd cry, I'd scream. I was like, you can't leave me and all this stuff. And I too have done that. PS sober, like prior to when I was drinking, which is kind of terrifying, but it is what it is. That whole like, don't leave me alone. I don't feel comfortable, just me being me, fear of rejection, um, abandonment issues, all of that. And I really, maybe that is why it was uncomfortable for me to read at parts, because it brought that back for me. That whole desperate, like, I can't have you leave me. I can't be alone. I don't feel good alone kind of emotion. And so, yeah, I thought she did a really good job explaining all of that, and being really true to it and not giving us the highlight reel, the Instagram aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What did you think about her, I don't want to call it a diversion, but a different path from AA? She took a 12-step path for a little while, or tried to, and then decided that was not for her.
You know, that happens a lot.
Yep.
It happens all the time.
Yep.
And sometimes people end up in the long term returning back to 12 step, and sometimes they find other things. I think there's a lot of different pathways to recovery, and there's not a one size fits all for every single person.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot more opportunity now than there was even back in 2006 when I put the plug in the jug. And obviously at that time, there was a lot more opportunities than there was, let's call it in the 90s, right? When arguably I should have probably considered stopping. And so I think that that's super normal. But I always get frustrated when 12 step gets a bad rap. Because when I hear that it doesn't work, I'm like, it's never from someone who has honestly done all of the 12 steps super thoroughly.
Right.
And with somebody else who has the experience of doing it super thoroughly.
Right.
I haven't met that person. And if you're out there, call me, prove me wrong. Like, prove
Yeah.
me wrong. I'd love to hear how that happened. But that, in my experience, I haven't run into that unicorn. And so that I get a little protective of 12 step. I do.
Same.
Because you can't argue with the 80 plus year history. You can't argue with the millions of people whose lives have been changed, not just here in the United States, but all around the world.
Yeah.
And a little nerd fact for you, as you know, I'm leaving on a red eye tonight, and I'm going to be landing in New York tomorrow, and I don't really have plans until Saturday. And so this girl is going to go by the general service office and
You
take
are?
a little tour.
Oh,
Yeah.
fangirling.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. It absolutely does. And my challenge too is to really try and, not, how do I want to say this? It's not get offended by when people, choose a different path than 12 step, but to really listen to what they are saying that their experience was. is hard for me to do sometimes because I tend to be like that grumpy old man in the back of a 12-step room, right? Who's like, oh, well, if you just did it the Akron way, if you took the steps, based on the 1, 2, 3 in the parking lot, or if you like, I get kind of like that a little bit. And so when I feel that rising up in me, I'm like, mm-hmm. Okay, so time to remain a curious learner, like time to, pump the brakes a little bit. But I think that, for me, when I find something that has really worked well for me, I have to remind myself this is not for everybody. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
And
it's hard
there's
for me to remember.
and there's so I mean, you and I both know every meeting is wildly different.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand these are run by by volunteers that are not coming in with like really great mental health, right?
Right.
A lot of human flaws all up in the mix, right?
Yeah.
And so like I learned early on, like if I didn't like a meeting, like go to another one, keep going until I found one that I did like. Because yes, of course there's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of unwell people in 12-step rooms without a doubt. And it's really hard to have discernment when you're just trying to white knuckle and hold on to your chair and not drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. And it's also, I absolutely acknowledge that the book was written in 1939
Yeah.
and it is outdated. It has not, there are lots of parts that have stood the test of time, and there are some parts that have not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, kind of like I mentioned a couple minutes before, focus on what is the similarity, what you
Mm-hmm.
do identify with, leave the rest of it away. I can just set it to the side. I
Mm-hmm.
don't I don't need to worry about the chapter to the wives. I don't need to worry
Right.
about it. Like
Right.
I just
Yeah.
don't. So yeah, and but I think I always think it's great when people talk about all the different things they've tried, and I've done a lot of other things to augment
Yes.
my 12-step journey. There has been a lot of therapy. There's been hypnotherapy, there's been yoga, there's been meditation, there's been sound baths, there's
Mm-hmm.
been cleanses, there's been going to different types of churches, there's been, I mean, books and podcasts, and like I've tried, so many things.
Right.
I've probably tried as many self-help things as I've tried diets, right? Like
Right.
it's this constant voyage of self-improvement that
Yes.
this quest that we're on, right?
Right.
So yeah, but it's
Yeah.
always a little challenging for me.
But I feel like what you just said is kind of the key. Like that's the key to it, right? Is that we don't become like super dogmatic and, stuck in our ways and curmudgeon-y, but that we're constantly, kind of seeking. I feel like that's for me where um the growth has happened in remaining a seeker. Like, okay, well, that's interesting. That works for that person. Because the other thing that I have uh, had trouble with, to be totally honest, is like the California sober stuff or the mushrooms and all that different stuff. And then I have to remind myself, like, okay, so I may not go out and try that, which is my choice not to. But you know, hey, if it is working for somebody else and they're genuinely okay at this moment with it, then great, and for me to honor and respect somebody else's experience, which is kind of why I really enjoy reading Quit Lit, because everybody's stories, yeah, they kind of have a similar arc, right? Generally. And it's like, okay, hit a low, and then life gets kind of better. And that's one thing I did appreciate so much about Erica's book too, is she talked a lot about her relapses.
Mhm.
And, that is part of a lot of people's stories. I relapsed after, being in rehab for 28 days or whatever it was the first time, 30 days, went straight to the airport and got drunk because I just I could not get out of my denial, just, oh, couldn't be an alcoholic, couldn't possibly be. And so I related a lot to her relapsing stories and covering up her breath with garlic or whatever, and just the full-time job that maintaining this cover that everything's okay when it's not okay really becomes. And yeah, I think again that's why I got pretty tired when I was reading it. I was just like, no, this is like nauseating, but in a relatable way. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
nauseating in a negative way per se, but just like just getting tired of being sick and tired. And I could like feel that coming through the pages of her book and found that totally relatable as well. Now,
Mhm.
you, on the other hand, can I ask you this? Stayed sober. Once you got sober, you stayed
Mhm.
sober, correct?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, but yes. From the moment I went into outpatient, I skipped right past inpatient. I was like, no thanks. I like to call it project managing my own rock bottom.
Love it.
I did outpatient. I got immediately into 12 step, and I did have like a burning bush spiritual experience that has stayed with me all these years. But I want to be really clear about something about people that they somehow are able to get it and then keep it for now, at least. First of all, I can't tell you how many times I tried
Mm,
until I actually tried.
mm,
Right. So you could argue that I was relapsing from the age of 16 to 30, right? Over and over and over again, because I would swear it off and I would, on my best try, get 2 or 3 weeks on
mm,
my best try. Right.
mhm.
So I also want to point out that there are still challenges without a relapse. Life still comes at you full force.
Mhm.
Jobs are lost, people die, you get major health issues, your
Yeah.
mental health goes bananas. Like, I've talked about this before, but at 4 or 5 years sober, I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to live.
Mhm.
Right. Because my behaviors actually hadn't changed that much. The only thing I had changed at that point was removing drugs and alcohol.
Mhm.
So I was still a miserable sack of shit, quite honestly. I just looked a little better and I had a little more money because I wasn't quite blowing it as crazy as I was before.
Mhm.
And so I would argue that that 4 or 5 year mark when I didn't want to live was actually way lower than the bottom I came in on.
Mm.
Right. And the other thing about when I think about my bottom and my burning bush experience is that nothing actually really bad was happening at that time.
Mm.
Some horrific things had happened before that, again, between the ages of 16 and 30.
Mhm.
Some horrific things that if I told you any of those stories, you would be like, why wasn't that your bottom?
Mm.
Right. We can't pick what our bottoms are. My bottom actually doesn't make any sense. It was
Mhm.
like not that bad. I think I was even account executive of the month that month. Like it wasn't that bad, but it doesn't, that's an outside thing. My inside was
Yeah.
so broken, so broken. And
Yeah.
so it's like, if it's showing on the outside, then you've got to know that it's like tenfold darker on the inside. Right.
Mhm.
And so life isn't easy. It's just not. And, talking on the harm reduction, um, I, I used to have a problem with it. I used to really struggle with it. And now I'm like, who am I to judge?
Yeah.
Who am I to judge? And quite honestly, if someone becomes a regular cannabis user, but that gets them off opiates or fentanyl
Yes,
or
exactly.
heroin and
Uh-huh.
alcohol, and they don't have consequences from it, and they're able to live into their full potential,
Mhm. Great.
great, great,
Mhm.
you know,
Yep.
because arguably I still have a sugar addiction, right?
Right. Yeah.
Depending on what's going on, I can shop a little too much,
Yeah.
right? Like the addictions don't just go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's complex. It's
Yeah.
complex.
It is. And I love that you brought up the sugar addiction because I currently have about 17 bottles of shampoo in my cabinet. I think I may have mentioned that I am a shampoo and conditioner hoarder for some reason because I guess subliminally or somewhere inside me, I'm convinced they're going to quit making shampoo. I don't really know, but there's something inside of me that's like, I must have this just in case. Literally, like, I don't even know. I mean, I think it comes from a place of like fear of, not being able to get what I think I need, the instincts and all of that, not being able to have something that I want, a certain kind of shampoo that I want, whatever. So I'm just going to hoard it. And supposedly that's going to make me feel secure and stable. Like, that's the only thing I can make of that. But
Well,
addiction transfer.
I feel a lot of relief in you sharing that story. Number one, if the world somehow comes to an end and I need to wash my hair, I
Perfect.
now know I have a safe space to go. So I'm
Yes.
going to tuck that away for sure. Number two, I also hoard weird things. So in addition to my Quitlet library, I have a fashion coffee table book obsession, right?
Mm,
And I buy them all the time. And sometimes I look through them when I buy them. Sometimes I don't. I just put them in the living room. I have this like floating bookcase. So it looks like they're a stack, but you could actually pull them in and out. Any hoozle, not the point. So here's the thing. In my mind, I used to tell myself I'm saving him for a rainy day.
yeah,
Okay. Then, maybe I'm saving him if something happens, like, I don't know, we get locked in our houses for 2 years.
something like that.
I want to let you know when we were locked in our houses for 2 years, I still didn't read them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I collect weird things, I can't, like, if I like something, I like it a lot. If I find a pair of underwear or a pair of leggings that I think are amazing, I can't, I obsess about buying 10 of them because
Yep.
I'm afraid of not having enough. And that is not any different than how I approached alcohol.
Yes.
So I am still arguably not well. I still am a work in progress.
100. And as you know, because we are also friends, um, I'm the same way. And sidebar, I feel like this is an appropriate time for me to share with any listeners the story of Amy and Elyse getting kicked out of the gift shop at
Oh yeah, that happened. Yeah.
at the museum in Vegas. And yeah, I mean, so we're at this, I don't want to name names, but it was an amazingly wonderful experience. So I will say shout out to the Neon Museum, right?
I'm a big fan of the
Big
Neon
fan.
Museum. Big fan.
Huge.
If you find yourself in Vegas,
You got to do it.
absolutely go to the Neon Museum. Doesn't matter if you go night or day. I've actually only been at nighttime. I would love to go at daytime. It is a fabulous
Yep.
alcohol-free experience.
Yeah.
If you love Instagram, it is the best place to go. The
Yes.
history, the lights, all of it. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It
Go
is.
on.
No, it's truly amazing. And it was an incredible find. And so props to you for doing that. Just PS, Elyse is just, she's got all the great ideas, let me tell you. So we go to this Neon Museum and at the end, and it's a very it is kind of a time, it's well timed, okay? It's well organized. And so you show up, you get your ticket, you show up at a certain time, and then you get a certain you get like a tour guide. So you get a certain amount of time within which you may peruse everything that they have to show you. And then at the end, you are ushered, as is commonly practiced in many places, into a gift shop where you can purchase things and then be on your merry way. Well, we sort of didn't know, we were not aware that we were going to be on a time limit inside the gift shop. That was not disclosed to us. Would you say that's accurate, Elyse?
Was not disclosed. And I have to say, because I have been there before, I had not had that experience before, that there was a limited time to shop.
Yes. Now, I mean, look, I'm not going to speak for you, but had I known that there was going to be a limited time, you would have seen a side of me that was completely different when we got in that gift shop. I would have been like I was on the supermarket sweep, right? Like I would have just been grabbing stuff, throwing it at the cash register, and like, let's get all the things, right? Because I might need them. And you know that that's how I roll because you've seen me pack for a week in Vegas. And so, which pretty much looked like I was trying to move to Vegas with my suitcases.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't remember if it was announced to us or if our tour guide was like, okay, chop chop, time to wrap up your stuff and get out of here. But we were in there for like what, 10, maybe 15 minutes, which is not really,
I don't even think it was that long. I really don't.
it
It
was
was not, I
quick.
don't think it was quick. I don't think, let's call it 10. I don't think it was 15.
No. And I remember just kind of giving you the side eye and you kind of gave me the side eye and we were kind of like, huh? Like what? So we got to go right now? Like we're just warming up. Like we're not even remotely ready to, head to the cash register and make any purchases yet. I mean, we're still standing there with our ET phone home little figurines that we had to have for what reason it's still unknown, but we were just like dumbfounded by this. And so to this day, I actually, no joke, am kind of like from time to time, like, gosh, I wonder what else. Yeah, what did they have in there again? What did they have in that gift shop? Like, I mean, it's like a thing. Like I can't let it go for some reason. So I guess I need more help is kind of the way I look at that one. But that's the thing, right? It's like this sense of I like more. I need more, right? And that's how I was when I drank. It was like I need to make sure that I have all this same trip. And I just think it's ironic because we're sort of on the brink of going back to Vegas for another trip
Yes, we
because it's
are.
been about a year that we did this.
Mhm.
But on that same trip, you also saw me go down to the gift store at our hotel nightly to purchase coffees for the morning in case, we woke up and needed coffees. Like you may not be able to relate to this if you're like a totally normal person, but for alcoholics in recovery or alcoholics not in recovery or substance use abusers, whatever you want to call us. This is a common thing, right? Like I feel one with people who understand this side of me. So
I
uh,
will say, yes, I'm sure there is addiction part that plays into it, but you are also the mother of 8 children. So it is natural for you to make sure that all the necessities are covered and that like you have all the things. But I will say traveling with you is a true joy because we wanted for nothing. There was always coffee, there was always snacks. And I very much remember being asked to leave the gift shop. And let's be clear, I've never met a gift shop I don't love. My house looks like a gift shop, but a museum gift shop is like, right?
yes.
And I do remember, I don't know why we had the ET friendship figurines. I don't know. I still have mine. I don't know. I don't actually know why that was there because I don't know what ET has to do with Vegas or neon signs,
I know.
but whatever. I don't know what's going on, but I do remember like I panicked and I did start grabbing. Like I already had a few things in my hand, but I just started grabbing and I was so confused because it's like, but we're trying to spend money. Why are you trying to kick us out of here? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's my one and only time of being kicked out of a gift shop. I've been kicked out of lots of places, to be clear, but never a gift shop. Sober.
Yeah. So a little piece of unsolicited feedback for the Neon Museum, as much as we love it and think it's fantastic. I don't know, maybe if people want to spend more money in the gift shop, just maybe consider letting them. I don't know. I'm just going
The
to throw it out there.
the only thing I can think in their defense is maybe because a year ago we were still kind of pandemic-y. right?
Ah,
So maybe it was about they could only have a certain number of people in the shop and they wanted to
point.
make sure everybody got a turn. Like, because it's such a great museum, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I
Yes.
will definitely go back. And the gift shop is worth it. Like, it's a great gift shop. I have a piece of art in my living room from that gift shop that I think I got that trip. Somehow I got it before we got kicked out. So can't say enough about the gift shop at the Nia Museum.
Yeah, I agree. And it wasn't a very large gift shop. So
Nope.
that's the other thing too. It
Yeah.
was kind of tiny. And so there was that. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, and okay. So yes,
But yes, we love more. That
we
is
love
that
more.
is we love more. And if you
We do
love
love more.
more, you are in the right place.
Yeah, agreed. And okay, so here's the deal. So as we wrap this up, and you know what? I'm going to not even apologize that we get sidetracked because it is what
Mhm.
it is. I mean,
Yeah.
this is just how it rolls. But I I know, so at the beginning of this podcast when I was bringing up Green Lake and the merry-go-round and how I felt reading Erica's book.
Mhm.
Um I think this might be an appropriate way for me to wrap this podcast episode up is to confess to you, Elyse, what my current obsession with more is. Now,
Ooh.
yeah. So I found a show
Oh boy.
on Hulu that
Mhm.
I should not be watching. Not because it's a bad show, not because it has anything to do with, Hulu or nothing. Love it. Love Hulu. Love obsessive shows that I can't stop watching. But this particular show um, is called Frogging, Phrogging, and it's about people hiding in your house, in the walls or in the crawl spaces.
Wait, what? That's a
It's not,
thing?
yeah.
That's a thing?
Okay, and so the episode that I started with was a family who lived in Green Lake and had a frogger living in their house. And I'm just here to tell you that I can't stop thinking about it. And so all things since then have had like metaphors like Green Lake adjacent, hence me thinking about the playground and the merry-go-round and all this
It
stuff.
was very specific. You went specifically there really quick. And considering you live on the east side, I did find that a little odd.
I-
Yeah.
yeah. And we used to be more adventurous, and really get out a lot more than we do now and explore Seattle things. But yeah. So I think because I was already having like feelings of being mixed up and crazy inside, and then I see this frogging episode, and the house is in Green Lake, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh," and I'm like just feeling like somebody set me on like ultra fast speed, like I was like a blender and somebody just set it and forgot it. I just felt like everything was kind of like on hyper, I don't know, hyper speed mode or something, and I was feeling everything at an amplified pace after watching that. And so now I'm like, okay, where are my crawl spaces? Are they all locked? Because this is like a thing, man. Like peeps be breaking into homes and like eating things out of the pantry and like doing stuff like that, feeding animals, which could be a win, I guess, depending on how you look
Mm,
at it. But
mm.
yeah,
Well, I think the moral of the story that what we've uncovered here is that, you know, even after we put down alcohol and the drugs, that obsessiveness, that
yes,
constant need for more, the fixating, the obsessing, that doesn't go away, which is why we have to constantly be working on our recovery,
correct.
right? We can't take days off, right? And if we do, we certainly can't take very many off in a row.
Right.
Because it doesn't take me long to get into
Mm-hmm.
an unwell space where I'm not far from a drink. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not far from a relapse.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I hope that I never relapse, but I can't see the future. I don't have a magic 8 ball.
Right.
I mean, I do have a magic 8 ball, let's be clear.
Of
But
course.
like, I mean, because gift shop, hello. But
Yes.
but you know, so but I that's why the one day at a time thing works for me.
Yeah.
You know, I do sometimes quite honestly take it a little too literally, like, ooh, I can't make plans a month from now. I'm only worried about today. I can't worry about my financial future. I'm only worried about today. Like
Right.
I have, you know, I have over another thing I've overdone is one day at a time. Like I will overdo anything. Anything. And that you're right. That is, you know, that was definitely part of the essence of Erica's constant battle of
Mm-hmm.
relapses. And that
Yeah.
is definitely you know, a big part of what that book was.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And also, you know, I need to keep doing the work that I need to do for my own recovery and my own sanity so that I'm not choosing to watch shows that are putting me in that headspace. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like driving by an accident, right? Like, I don't want to look, 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 but I'm looking like, you know, so that's the whole thing of it. But I have to say, if I look at how I behaved when I was drinking versus the things I deal with now, like watching too much TV that isn't great for me, I'll take that all day long. Like, I will take it. You know, I don't want those drinking behaviors back. Like, that was a far worse life for me. So, you know what? I'm glad we are now TV addicts and gift shop addicts. I'm going to just say
Well, and I feel like I need to meet you at your vulnerability that you've brought to the table today with your frogging obsession. And I will share one of mine. I am currently struggling with a TikTok obsession.
that.
I might have to actually remove the app from my phone. But one of the things that I watch on the TikTok is chiropractor videos. I like to hear
Oh,
people's bones cracking.
okay.
I like to think that it's like osmosis. Like if I hear somebody else's bones cracking, I can feel what that feels like.
Ah,
And it recently went to a new level of it just went to a new level. I am now following a pet chiropractor that cracks the bones on dogs and cats.
mhm.
And I really look forward to all of his videos. And I sometimes spy my dogs and think, should I give it a try? No, it's not. It's not. It's what? It's what? What?
Oh, but okay. So glad to know that I'm not alone. And I also want to know, could this possibly qualify as like ASMR, the bone cracking thing?
I,
Who who knows? We're not going to put a label on it. Why would we
mm-mm,
do that?
I don't know. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode today. I
Yeah.
know it's been a little like pinballers, like we've been like bing,
Yes,
bing, 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 bing.
we
But
have.
welcome to Elyse and Amy. Like
Yeah.
this is if you were to eavesdrop on our conversation at any time, this is kind of how it goes.
Yep.
We just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We don't turn off,
We
and it's one
can't
of the
take a
things.
straight path. We just can't.
No, no, we can't. We
We
can't.
can't. That's
Yeah,
okay. We're
yeah.
just in acceptance about that, and it's all
Hmm.
right. And
Hmm.
so, hey, Elise, before we sign off, would you mind talking about our next book that we just decided
Oh, yes, I will.
on?
It's just out this week, and you all know, you know her and you love her. We are absolutely reading Brittany's new memoir. What's it called?
I Am Woman? Is
I
that
Am Woman.
yeah.
Yes, I think that is
Mhm.
it. It just arrived today from Amazon. I'm packing it with me. I'm very excited. I'm
Mhm.
trying not to watch too much about it on
Yeah.
social media because I want to have my own personal experience with it, but there's
Yes.
quite a bit out there. And, you know, I don't know if she's one of us or not, but she has arguably had a lot of mental health challenges in
Yes.
her career. Whether or not alcohol and substances played into that, maybe we'll find out in the book. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I can definitely identify. I'm eager to hear more of her story from, and I've also heard conspiracies like, did she write this? Did somebody else write this? Like, I
Mm.
don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I want in, and I'm so glad that it's our next book.
Can't wait. So order it up today because it's Brittany, bitch. So, all right. On that note, be kind, rewind. Thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. You can keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.